So can you start off by telling me name and then what you do here at YSU?
Okay, my name is Venise Abell, and I'm a graduate student, and I'm in the Interdisciplinary Visual Arts program in my master's. Um, I'm a photography lab assistant. I'm also the lab assistant down in sculpture, and since I wanted to teach um, after I graduate, that was one of the reasons why I got a master's as well, because in order to teach on the collegiate level, you need to have your master's degree. So I kind of like help out with the analog classes, analog 1 and 2, and you know I do some lessons. I get a chance to teach and get that experience. So I need hours for that too.
And so can you tell me a little bit about the piece you did in Butler?
Okay, but that piece was redlining. What really got me interested in asking questions to look into that further is I'm a native of Youngstown. I grew up on the south side. I graduated from South High School in '84. And the neighborhood is totally different than when I grew up. And you know, and I was just talking with my parents and asking them a bunch of questions, and you know, and then I got to learn about, you know, where they grew up. The Monkey's Nest is where they grew up, and my dad told me about how they couldn't own their homes. A lot of them wanted to own their homes, and they wouldn't sell them their homes. And when that industry, you know, it's like an industrial park now, when they all came in, they just pretty much bought the land from the landowner, white landowners, and their homes was sold out from underneath them. So they literally had to like just find a place to stay. They actually had to move in with another family. They actually, you know, so families had to live together because it was just like their homes were sold out from underneath them. And so, you know, talking with them more about that, and you know, seeing like, wow, they can do that. And then, you know, and then looking at the deterioration of my neighborhood, and like, why are there not businesses here, and why, you know, stuff like grocery stores, you know, you think you need that. And then banks started leaving. You know, we used to have a lot of banks on the south side, like Dollar Bank, and you know, all of them. And then next thing you know, the bank institutions, I mean, you know, they're not there. So, and looking into it, that's when I ran across the FHA and the actual laws and how all that played a part back in the 1930s, and how it's still affecting the black communities today, even though it's supposedly now illegal. But a lot of the practices are still there. I know that it's one of the lending companies, and they just got sued because they charge blacks more for their car loans, and a lot of, and because I actually got like some money back because of it. That's why I'm trying to figure is it's like financial. I gotta really think about that, but you know, that was one of the, you know, and that was like in 2012. So, and this was supposed to be out in the 1970s. So like I said.
Can you speak to what the effect is of redlining as far as like education?
Well, yes, because you don't have the money coming into the community, or you don't have the money going into the schools, and you don't have the, you know, the families here to get even more funding from the state, because you have lower student levels. So, and all that plays a part. You know, each school district gets so much money for the number of students that they have. And if you have just whole groups of people that left the community, well, you don't get that funding like you used to. And again, if you look at the Youngstown City School District, it was never about whether the education was quality. I still believe, you know, I went to the Youngstown City. I had a great education. And even when I first came back here after the Navy and my son was there, they still had great programs. He got to do robotics, he got to, like, for his science, he was very heavily into science, got to teach a class in Indiana using satellite and lasers and stuff that they developed. So the education and the projects and stuff is there. It's just a myth that because most of the people are a certain amount of color, that means that the quality is somehow inferior, or, you know, but that's a myth, and that affects it greatly, because then you don't have that dollars going back into the school system.
Are you familiar with the term white flight?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, white flight, like, again, right after World War II, this is like, again, going on with redlining and all the misconceptions. Actually, whites were given money to go buy houses, loans, in a sense, that wasn't given to us. So, you know, and that was the other thing, you know, I look at my dad, and my dad, you know, he worked in a steel mill, and he made good money. So, why was this, you know, only affecting certain groups of people? You know, if it was like, you know, unilateral, it would affect everyone. But they weren't given loans in order to move into areas, you know, out of the area. You know, so basically, we're forced to live within this redlining, within, you know, the school districts, within all that. And then the money and the loans that the whites were given, they move out into the suburbs, you know. And a lot of them didn't make that more than my grandfather and my parents made. Really didn't. But they were just afforded that opportunity. And also, I had my exhibit. I had one museum goer come over to me, and she was just like, she wanted to talk to me. She talked to my son, and she was like, "Oh my God." She said, "It makes sense now." And I was like, you know, I didn't understand. And she said, "You know, when I was a little girl, we lived on the north side of Youngstown. I went to the Rand High School. I had many friends. It was, you know, our neighborhood was mixed, and, you know, I really enjoyed it. And then my parents just up and left. And I didn't ever understand, and I was always angry about that. We moved to Canfield. I hated it there. I didn't have any friends, and, you know, and my parents would always say, well, it just wasn't a good neighborhood. And she said she never understood that. She was just like, "What do you mean it's not a good neighborhood? You know, the school is great, the kids are great, and I have friends, and now I don't have friends." But, you know, and then when, you know, and along all these years come my project, and where I'm kind of explaining and then dealing with white flight and redlining and the different districts, and she was like, it finally made sense to her, you know, that that's what it was. And, you know, a lot of people would be surprised that that's what it is. No type of history that, you know, that not only we as black people need to know, but a lot of white people don't know. That, you know, they were told a lie.
Yeah.
You know, this lie that, you know, blacks aren't clean, or they don't keep their property up, your property value will go down. Where did that come from? Your property value will go down. That's the big thing. If a black person moves in your neighborhood and your property values will go down. Well, that all ties back into the redlining, because actually the property value did go down in those redlining districts. And they do want to, you know, the bank and institutions, and now it's extended into, like I said, you know, the grocery stores. You know, Youngstown is 100% a food desert. We rank 3rd in the nation on, you know, food hardships. That's saying a lot, you know, and a lot of it all has to do with the way that, you know, something had happened based off of racism in the 30s, just how it affects our quality of life still today. And that we need to be vigilant, and because they're encased in these laws, and, you know, it requires us to really take a look at who we put in office. We don't want to get started on that one. And who, you know, but locally, you know, this redlining really stresses the need for us to pay attention locally who our politicians are, because this is a local thing. This is the city of Youngstown, so we do need to pay attention to who our congressmen are, who our mayors is, who our governor is, who our councilmen, because some of these things, they need to come together and figure out, okay, so how are we going to change this around and make this work? So, our local races, and a lot of people, don't really look at it until it's time for the president. There's no telling what our communities and what shape they're going to look like now.
How do we begin to nurse those wounds of redlining? How do we begin to change things?
Education. Like I said, we got to have those conversations. Working with our local government and councilmen, looking into being aware of what is being done on both sides. And that's just Black Americans, but white Americans as well, because a lot of them are, like I said, their truths are the lies that they were being told, and not necessarily the truths. So even on their end, have to be, to look for the truths and to use their power along with our power to rectify, because it can be done. I mean, civil rights wasn't something that was just blacks contributed to. It was when all groups of people said, hey, this is wrong. See how we were able to kind of turn a lot of stuff around. And that's what it's going to have to take now. And it's going to have to take, knowing that this is the reason and not all the other lies that we've been told to get to the truth. And then once you get everybody on the same page with the same truth, then we can begin to knock down those barriers. And just not ever forgetting where you came from. I'm a big proponent to where, we have a lot of successful Black people in, America today. And it might take us, building another Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, maybe not look outside for somebody else to help. Because, back in slavery days, they didn't do that. They looked toward themselves. And that's maybe what we might have to do again, look toward ourselves. And whatever successes that we have, bring ourselves up as.
All right, so yeah, just tell me a little bit about, I guess the process of making the images, putting them on, this specific kind of format, putting the text over them.
Okay, well, yeah. Basically, when you think of old houses and neighborhoods, you think of the wood, you think of faded paint. And that is kind of like with these boxes that I made and that I put the images on. Because when I put my images together, I look at everything, how to, create a whole picture and a whole experience of what I'm talking about that would bring the concept together. So the concept was redlining, and I wanted to use just a red, just plain red. So when you can kind of see that redlining and tying into it. I also use caustic over it. And I always use layers in my work. And what the layers represent is the many different problems and the many different factors that goes in that created this problem, So it's never just like one thing. It's usually, just a whole bunch of things, and that's the reason why the problems sometimes exist, because we just tackle maybe one part when it's just one of many. So that's what it probably is to use the encaustic. And the text, basically, I kind of wanted to weave that in because, I wanted people to know, and this is actual text from some parts of the FHA, the actual law that went in effect that kept, people of color within a certain district and in the poor neighborhoods. And, so I layered that over it. So when you're looking at the image, it's more than just an image. It's like every time you look at it, you can see a little more than what's actually there. And I kind of highlighted different things in each of, each one of these. This one talks about interest rates, high interest rates, and denied businesses. And then this kind of goes along with, that's the business photographs and why they're looking the way they're looking. The artist statement, I wanted to really hit home with that. 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separate but equal, 35 years of racial housing policy. That's it.